The sun hung high in the sky, casting a harsh glare across Elm Street. The neighborhood was alive with the sounds of daily life, children laughing as they played hopscotch on the sidewalk, the distant hum of traffic, and the occasional bark of a dog. Among the bustling activity, an elderly woman moved slowly, her steps careful but steady. Her name was Martha, and at 82, she carried herself with a quiet dignity, a woman who had weathered storms of life yet always smiled at strangers. She was well known in the area, often baking pies for the neighbors or volunteering at the local library. Today, she had gone to the market to pick up groceries for herself and a few meals she planned to deliver to friends in need. The grocery bag hung heavy from her hand, and her glasses caught the sunlight as she glanced down to ensure she hadn't dropped anything. There was a rhythm to her steps, a rhythm that would soon be violently interrupted. From the shadows of a narrow alley, a figure emerged, a man whose face was partially hidden by a hood. His eyes, sharp and calculating, scanned the street before locking onto Martha. He moved swiftly, his steps silent but purposeful. Before Martha could even sense danger, he was in front of her, a pistol glinting in the sunlight. "Hand over your purse." "Now," the man demanded, his voice harsh and urgent. Martha froze, her heart hammering in her chest. The years of wisdom she carried did little to steady the tremble in her hands. She hesitated, weighing her options, but the cold steel of the gun made the choice terrifyingly clear. Slowly, she extended her hands, carefully letting the man take her purse. "Come on, lady. Move it," he barked, shoving her lightly. The shove sent a jolt through Martha's frail frame, but she didn't stumble. Instead, she stood her ground as best she could, her eyes brimming with fear but also defiance. She had survived life's toughest moments, and she wasn't about to let a coward define her final years. And then, like a scene from a movie, the roar of motorcycles shattered the uneasy silence of the street. The sound was deep, powerful, and intimidating, echoing down the block. Several bikers were approaching, their engines throbbing like a heartbeat of steel. They had been on a charity ride through the city, the kind they often did to support local causes, but today fate had placed them at the right place at the right time. From their vantage point a block away, they had seen the commotion. They didn't need to hear Martha's cries to understand. Anyone with even a shred of experience could sense danger when it came to vulnerable people. And these bikers had experience. They were a brotherhood of riders, men and women who lived by a strict code: protect those who cannot protect themselves. The lead biker, a massive man with a thick beard and a leather vest adorned with patches, slowed his bike just enough to assess the situation. "That's not right," he muttered under his breath. "She's alone." Without hesitation, the group shifted into action. Engines revved, tires screeched, and in a synchronized move, they positioned themselves strategically along the street. The man holding Martha at gunpoint suddenly realized he was no longer just confronting an elderly woman, he was facing a wall of determination and raw power. "Step away from her," the lead biker called out, his voice calm but dripping with authority. The robber's bravado faltered. He had assumed no one would intervene. The streets during the afternoon were busy, yes, but he had counted on the fear in his victim to keep him in control. He hadn't anticipated resistance, and certainly not from a group of people who looked like they could crush him without breaking a sweat. Martha, still clutching her purse, felt a strange mix of fear and relief. The bikers weren't just a sign of hope, they were her shield, a living barricade between her and the danger that had crept into her quiet life. The lead biker dismounted his motorcycle with surprising agility, his boots hitting the pavement with authority. He moved slowly, deliberately, so as not to startle the gunman into violence. "It's over," he said. "Give her purse back, and no one gets hurt." The man laughed nervously, trying to maintain control. I just need the money." "I won't," but his words faltered as another biker flanked him, cutting off his escape. Tires screeched, engines roared, and the man realized that no matter how fast he ran, he couldn't outrun the force that had surrounded him. Panic set in. "Ma'am, step back," one of the bikers instructed Martha gently. "You're safe now." Martha obeyed, her hands still trembling, as the group moved in to contain the robber. In a swift, coordinated maneuver, they disarmed him, ensuring that the gun was out of reach and that he could no longer threaten anyone. The precision and speed of their actions were astonishing, almost choreographed, yet executed with a raw, instinctive sense of justice. As the man dropped to his knees, defeated and terrified, one biker leaned down, his face close to the robber's. "You don't scare us, and you won't scare her. Not here. Not today." With the authorities called and on their way, the bikers made sure Martha had her purse back. She held it tightly, feeling the weight of more than groceries. It was a symbol of her safety, restored by these unexpected heroes. "Thank you," Martha whispered, her voice shaking. "I don't know how I can ever repay you." The lead biker, now back on his motorcycle, nodded. "Just stay safe, ma'am. That's all we ask." With engines roaring, the bikers sped off, leaving behind a street that had returned to its normal rhythm, though the memory of their intervention lingered like a powerful storm that had swept through the neighborhood. Passers-by who had witnessed the scene whispered among themselves, astonished by the courage and swiftness of the riders. Word of the incident would soon spread, a story that reminded everyone that even in broad daylight, justice can be instant, and heroes can arrive from the most unexpected places. Martha, still holding her purse, took a deep breath and continued down the street. The sun was still high, but it seemed a little less harsh now. She had faced fear, and in the midst of it, witnessed something extraordinary, that courage, loyalty, and a sense of duty can manifest in the most powerful, unexpected forms. Elm Street would never forget it, and neither would she. The robber crouched on the hot asphalt, his hands raised, eyes darting nervously between the bikers who surrounded him. Sweat streamed down his face, not from the sun above, but from the weight of his realization. He had made a fatal mistake. The elderly woman he thought would be an easy target had unwittingly summoned the wrath of a force he had never imagined. The lead biker, a mountain of a man with tattoos curling up his arms and a leather vest that seemed to carry decades of experience, stepped closer. His boots hit the pavement with a deliberate, measured rhythm. "You had one job," he said quietly, yet each word carried the weight of inevitability. "Don't hurt anyone. But you chose differently." The man swallowed hard, trying to muster the bravado he had shown moments ago, but it was gone. His gun, once a symbol of power, now lay discarded several feet away. "Useless, you don't understand," he stammered. I needed the money. My kid, my rent." The biker shook his head slowly, disappointment etched into his expression. "Everyone's got problems, man. Everyone's got struggles. But threatening someone else, stealing from someone weaker, that isn't the answer. That's the problem." Another biker, a woman with striking blue hair tucked beneath a helmet, moved to block the alley behind him. Her gaze was unwavering, fierce yet calm. "The cops are 5 minutes out. You won't get away. And even if you did, we'd find you. Elm Street doesn't forget, and neither do we." The man's bravado crumbled entirely. He realized his options were gone. He tried a desperate move, lunging toward the discarded gun, but before he could reach it, two bikers simultaneously blocked him, forcing him to the ground with expert precision. Pain shot through his ribs as he landed on the asphalt, but the move was swift, controlled, and non-lethal. The lead biker knelt beside him, his eyes locking onto the man's. "Look around you," he said. "Notice everyone watching. Notice the street you just terrorized. You wanted quick money, didn't care who you hurt, and now you're caught. You wanted fast results, but justice takes no shortcuts." The man swallowed, his breaths ragged. He hadn't expected words, they had expected force, perhaps, but not lectures. Not morality. Not accountability delivered with such precision and authority. He was no longer the predator. He was the prey. Meanwhile, Martha watched from a safe distance, clutching her purse tightly. Her hands were still trembling, but she was mesmerized by what she saw. The bikers didn't just protect her, they taught the robber a lesson in courage, responsibility, and fear. She had never witnessed such controlled power, a force that could be terrifying but was exercised only with purpose and restraint. A younger biker, barely in his 20s, stepped forward, holding his helmet under his arm. He spoke directly to the men on the ground. "You're not lucky today. Not because we're strong, but because you were weak. You preyed on someone you thought couldn't fight back. That's the difference. You underestimate people like her, and people like us." The robber's eyes darted, desperately looking for an escape route, any weak point. But Elm Street had become a cage. The bikers moved fluidly, covering every angle, leaving no gaps, no chance to flee. Panic replaced any defiance he had once felt. Martha, finally finding her voice, stepped forward slightly, her voice trembling but firm. "Please, make sure he faces the police. Don't let him hurt anyone else." The lead biker nodded, giving her a reassuring glance. "He will. You did the right thing staying calm. That's why we were able to act without anyone getting hurt." Moments later, the unmistakable sound of police sirens pierced the air. Red and blue lights reflected off the buildings, flashing across the street where the drama had unfolded. The officers arrived to a scene they didn't fully expect, the robber immobilized, surrounded by a circle of bikers who looked more like guardians than law enforcement, and the elderly woman standing safely with her belongings intact. The lead biker spoke to the arriving officers, his voice steady. "Sir, ma'am, this is the man. He tried to rob her just minutes ago. We disarmed him, and we've contained him until you got here." The officers quickly moved in, handcuffing the men and leading him to their patrol car. He protested, trying to regain some sense of control, but his words fell flat. The reality of his situation had finally set in. He would have to answer for his actions. Martha approached the bikers, tears glistening in her eyes. "I don't know how to thank you. I feel safer knowing people like you exist." One biker, removing his helmet, revealed a kind smile beneath the rugged exterior. "Ma'am, we're part of the community too. Protecting people like you, that's our duty. You don't need to thank us. Just take care of yourself." The younger biker added, "And remember this, courage isn't about fighting back with fists or guns. It's about standing tall, even when fear surrounds you. You did that." As the police finished processing the scene, the bikers mounted their motorcycles once more. The engines roared to life, a deep, thunderous sound that echoed through the neighborhood. They revved one final time, as if signaling to the world that Elm Street had been defended, justice served, and balance restored. Martha watched them ride away, a strange mixture of awe and gratitude washing over her. The street, once filled with fear and tension, now felt alive with a renewed sense of safety and order. Neighbors peeked from windows, whispering excitedly, knowing they had witnessed something extraordinary. An elderly woman threatened in broad daylight, yet saved by heroes who rode through the chaos with precision and courage. In the days that followed, the story of Martha and the bikers spread quickly. Social media lit up with posts celebrating the unexpected guardians of Elm Street. Local news outlets covered the incident, highlighting the bikers' intervention as an example of instant, righteous justice. But for Martha, it wasn't fame she felt, it was a deep, unshakable sense of relief and hope. The robber, meanwhile, faced the consequences of his actions. The police ensured that he would answer for the fear and harm he had caused. And though he had tried to assert control over his victims, he now knew that actions had consequences, and that there were people in the world willing to intervene, swiftly and decisively, to uphold justice. For the bikers, it was just another day. They didn't seek recognition or reward. They rode for purpose, for honor, for the unspoken code that guided their every action. And Elm Street, once again, returned to its quiet rhythm, knowing that in the heart of its neighborhood, silent guardians were always watching. And as Martha finally returned home that afternoon, holding her recovered purse, she realized that true courage didn't always roar, it sometimes arrived on the rumble of motorcycles, carrying justice and reassurance through the streets. She smiled softly, knowing that even in a world full of unexpected danger, there were still heroes to be found.